speech, he talked about COP17, where, of course, the whole world is going to be descending on the city in the next week or so, and also the National Development Plan that was mooted by the National Planning Minister, Trevor Manuel, last week on Friday. So let's begin this conversation now with the President, and don't forget, you too can participate at home, as well as the business people that are here with us at the moment. Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much to be here with you once again and with the viewers.
Last time I spoke, you had traveled, I think it was to China, Middle East this time. Good trip?
Yes. I was in the Middle East. I visited two countries, the UAE as well as Oman. Very successful visit indeed. Very interesting, and to learn more things there. I think the development is just fantastic. I actually found Oman even more exciting in the manner in which they're approaching their development. In fact, they look at themselves as a strategic country in the Gulf, and therefore they are taking advantage of that. And I thought we could learn a thing or two as South Africa.
All right. You talked about COP17, big event. We did a successful World Cup, and all indications are we're going to be successful with COP17. But I think big question is the voice of Africa and the developing world being heard in this climate debate? I would imagine that we have different issues that we need to deal with other than the developing nations. Is our voice being heard out there, particularly when you're being hosted by the G20 and others?
Yes, I think our voice is being heard. I think what competes are the interests. The interests of the old world or the developed world and the developing world are not exactly the same. And of course, they don't also occupy the same positions in terms of strength and power. And therefore, the smaller voices have to be even more louder so that they could make an impact. For an example, if you talk about the climate change, many of the small countries and developing countries, that includes Africa, when the debate is being made, they are not necessarily responsible for the emissions that have caused the climate change. But they are suffering more in terms of what the climate change impact is. But we are, of course, debating the issue. And other countries that are developed used the kind of things that we are saying today we should not use. So also the question of balancing. How do you develop your economies whilst you are trying to go green in terms of the economy? This is a challenge with the old and big countries did not face. They were just doing it willy-nilly. But we have now to balance these and therefore emerge with a kind of economy that is indeed user-friendly to the climate. So that's the kind of debate that is being pushed forward. But I think the voices are being heard. What becomes a challenge are the responses being indeed made in such a way that they, in a sense, corresponds to the voices, to the issues that are raised by the developing countries. That is a debate. How do we balance those two? But it is an interesting debate, and I'm sure when the world descends to Durban, we will experience this firsthand. The debates that will be taking place wherein the vested interests at times get exposed in the manner in which countries and blocs take the kind of positions. It will be an interesting experience, I'm sure, for South Africa as well as for Africa indeed.
All right, so that's the global stage, but how do we deal with it on a very local level? Sometimes people, particularly in rural South Africa, are making life and death decisions about whether to chop down a tree or not for fuel, to keep warm, and perhaps to cook their food. How do we include them in this climate change debate when for them sometimes it's about staying alive?
Absolutely. That's part of the balance that I'm talking about. How do you get to the rural areas where you have got at the moment no electricity, and you say to people, don't chop down the woods and don't make fire? You are talking Greek to them. Are you saying they must not make food and they must just sit there and wait for death. Is a balance that we need to do, which goes together with your programs of development, because it means you need to substitute what they are using, the woodland. You need to say, what type of energy do we bring to the people? That is why, for an example, at the moment, a very increasing debate and activities about solar system kind of electricity. What do you do? And of course, other people, when they see these solar things, they don't see the wires. They say we are giving us inferior kind of electricity. Other people are getting the real one. So it's a question of balancing all of these, but also it says those kind of programs must be indeed done very seriously. We must invest on them so that we are able to reach the poor people as quickly as possible. But also to clarify that the quality of energy is the same. This one is more healthy because it comes from the sun, you burn nothing, etc. And in this context, I think we were very happy that very recently we signed a very important agreement with the DRC, the INGA project, which is hydro kind of electricity that is going to come up, which is going to affect not just the two countries, not just SADC, but the entire continent. In fact, that project is one of the major successes of what today is being called upon to be done by the countries, the greening the economy and the energy as such.
Well, you also touched on the National Development Plan. You told us what it hopes to do. But perhaps you can share with us what your initial thoughts are when you read the plan and saw it. Is it doable? How can we get people behind it?
Well, firstly, I think we should appreciate that it was shortly after elections when we were putting together departments, and we came up with the national plan. I think it was very clear that there was a gap here, because we've got all the plans of government being implemented by different departments, but they are all in silos, working very hard, good plans, but moving in different directions. There was no coherent, overarching plan that all the plans of the national departments, of the provinces, of the local government are talking to. We need to have a national plan that is moving in one direction, that everything that we do, we are developing South Africa towards a particular direction. We couldn't be just working for a long time in different directions. And thus, therefore, the idea was very logical that we should have the national plan. The point was, how do you do the national plan? Could you give it to a single department? In the first instance, there are human weaknesses, because others are going to say, but why is this department telling us, being a department itself? And therefore, it was important to bring that responsibility to the presidency so that it is overarching. Secondly, you had to say, do we have the same people saying, please think differently? Work out on a plan when they are convinced about their individual plans, even if it is national plans as such. So that's why it was important to establish a commission. That commission should not be part of the departments necessarily. It should be outside of the government workings and bureaucracies, etc. As a commission, composed of people drawn from all areas of the society, by people who are not necessarily the common people that you see on everyday basis running departments or whatever, but people who have different expertise and talent, but who are not also going to be bogged down like civil servants to listen to what the minister says, who are going to open up their minds and think for South Africa, not from a subjective party point of view, but from a South African national interest point of view, who must therefore make the first input into the national plan. But the link that we bring, that commission must be chaired by the minister, who is in the presidency, responsible for the national planning. This is what we have done. I think it has worked very well because the best brains of this country have come together and they've produced the report. As you know, before this draft report, they produced the diagnostic report, which first diagnosed the challenges that we are faced with. Now, this was done by people who are not defending any interest, any subjective interest, but who are actually looking at South Africa. How could we make South Africa work without taking other considerations? And this is, I think, has been the beauty of the plan that has come about. But what, in addition to that, to add value to that, then we are saying, here is a report. We can't say the experts know it all. They've helped us to draft it, but we want South Africans of every description to participate. That's why it has been launched. That is why in the next 5 to 6 months, we want South Africans to add value to this. We have diagnosed the difficulties. We now know what are the problems. I think the report itself deal with this very effectively. I think what is going to be called upon from all of us is to say, what are the solutions? What is it that we think should be in the plan to help South Africa move forward? So, as you can see, we took the matter away from the normal thing, the procedures, the parliament and everything. It must go there when everybody has participated. And it is, by the way, the culture of this country that people participate in the discussions so that South Africans must own this plan. They must say, this is our plan. It must not be a plan for an individual or for a party, for a parliament, but it must be a South African plan. That is what is powerful about this report. And of course, we are really expecting the citizens to participate, including yourselves.
Absolutely.
In the media.
we will certainly continue to unpack that. I'm sure that there are viewers that are keen to ask a little bit more about that, and maybe even business people, what's in it for them and what they can do. We'll continue the conversation with President Jacob Zuma in a short while when we come back here to Sibaya. In the meantime, though, let's go back to the studio. Enjoy Vuyo and Leanne.